Albany by the fire on Western.
Where's the fire?
House burned down right across from what used to be the Gingerman.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So that block is all closed.
Wait, is that the one we were just talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is this the wood too?
It was wooden, but it was like a double or triple decker with front porches. The one
Oh,
next
no,
to it
that's
looks
not-
burned too. It's an old apartment house,
Yeah, yeah.
but like a triple
There's
decker.
some serious shit.
Something's
Yeah,
interesting
now.
because they wiped out all of the garages. It's a huge hollow.
Yeah.
It's a good acre. It's available. They'd like to have somebody come in and do something with it. And then they blitzed out everything. There had been fire on Quail Street. So there's two open spaces, one across from the Ginger Man and the other one on Quail.
Well,
So,
now there's more open spaces.
oh dear.
Yeah, and I think people were injured.
Well,
Oh,
injured.
Yeah.
2 critically injured, it said, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, critically?
That number is 4 now since I clicked the article.
There-
Oh, my
Yeah.
There's
It did dawn.
two brick ones, a wooden one with a peaked
Yeah.
roof, and lots of shingles on top that's facing it.
Oh, so then 2
And then
critical.
one on the
What's it say,
so
were they
that's fine.
burned or?
So it doesn't say
know.
yet, it just says 4 people rescued and hospitalized, 2 suffered life-threatening injuries after a fast-moving fire.
I looked at the picture.
Yeah, they
'cause you
were,
couldn't
those 2 were
see it. I
found
only saw
inside,
it
is why
after
one
it's
person
down.
self-evacuated, one person was assisted out when they found the other 2 inside.
We're ready. Call this meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic Resources Commission of the City of Albany. In attendance this evening, myself, John Myers, Commissioner McEnany, Commissioner Garrity, Commissioner Tobin, and Commissioner Hacker. Representing us from a legal standpoint is Jason Thomas from the Corporation Counsel's Office, Aaron Glennon, Deputy Planner for the Planning Commission, is here running the show basically, and Christopher Lohman is the Preservation Planner for the City of Albany. I do declare we have a quorum, and we welcome anyone tuning in on YouTube. You probably have better things to do, and it's cold evening. So, we have one public hearing agenda item this evening. That is 540 Broadway. This is in the Downtown Historic District. And this is a certificate of appropriateness application to install 2 new internally illuminated signs. And this is a follow-up of a meeting that we held a few weeks back, at which time this was deferred for additional research on the subject by the staff of the planning office, and I believe Christopher has some information to share in that regard.
So, me and Aaron looked at the sign code, and there's currently 4 signs on the property currently. The addition of the 2 that Darren Katz is proposing would bring the structure to 6 signs, which is the maximum it's allowed to have on the structure. So to Marilyn's concern of last meeting of walls of signs, they'd be limited. This would be their maximum amounts of signs. To add any further signage, they would need to remove signs, or like with a new tenant, if they have another tenant, they'd have to remove the sign to put another sign in. And then in terms of the question about placement, we took a look around the downtown district and at decisions made across it, and we found 80 State Street as a good example of another non-conforming structure, or a non-contributing structure in the district. It has similar features with the stepped recessed entry, and it has signage no higher then below the third story windows, similar to what planning staff is recommending for the approval for 540 Broadway.
And the square footage of the sign, total is allowed and what we have already.
Yeah, this would basically, these two signs would max the building out of allowed signage on the structure.
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you.
No, this is very, very helpful information, because there was a concern, was a proliferation of signs on a building of this size.
Will you go back to the one you had with the numbers?
Yep. All showing all the signage.
80 State Street. Got that one.
So you just said something like the maximum height of one of the signs. That's what we saw over it. And you said third story.
Yeah, so as currently proposed, I always count them because there was a 1, 2. So the current proposal that Saxon Sign has is to mount them below the 4th story. Planning staff's recommendation is to move them down 1 story to be just above that double height entry.
Be more
for what we're
consistent too. From the other buildings.
So that's our recommendation.
So when I heard you say just before, excuse me, third story or fourth story, you were talking about your recommendation. You weren't talking about the maximum height above grade of a sign.
Right, so
Okay.
within the district, traditionally, it's no higher than below the 2nd story windows in the downtown district. But because this is a non-contributing structure, and to allow for us to alleviate street clutter and to recognize that it is not, a contributing structure to the district, we feel that if we moved it down 1 story from where it's proposed and kind of meet in the middle, that's kind of our proposal.
So what does it tell us about sign number 3?
Yeah, how did they get up there?
So for buildings, I believe 9 or more stories, or
6 or,
that portion of Chris.
Yeah, Aaron, and the Couchway sign was the 2020 approval, I think it was, that you had done.
Correct, that was prior to the current sign code.
okay?
And
I believe we sought a variance for that as well. That's our sign as well. But the code has changed since
Yep.
that has been up.
And
I believe it's for buildings 9 or more,
9 stories.
that's not permitted, and I think the height for the building and the placement of that was within in the code parameters.
At that time.
Prior to the current code, correct, yeah.
So what's the maximum height now permitted for this 6-ish story building for a sign?
So it would currently fall within the requirement of no higher than below the 2nd story window.
Okay. Which is where 1, 2, and 4.
And 4 are currently located, yes.
Okay, so that's what, aside from the number of signs and the square footage of the signs, et cetera, the code permits the signs to be at that same level that we see 1, 2, and 4.
Yes.
Okay. And now, what's proposed?
So proposed would be, what's currently proposed by Saxon Signs is the below the 4th, or is 1, 2, is above the 3rd story windows, below the 4th story. The planning department's recommendation would be to locate the NICE-TEC signs 1 story lower than they're currently proposed to the 2nd story.
Wouldn't that be a variance if I'm following you correctly? Or I guess I'm not.
Well, so he's here because the proposal is to put the signs above what the code currently allows. If they were above the 1st story only, this would have just been a staff reviewable COA.
And that's based on the historic resource overlay guidelines, not the sign code.
So it doesn't, I'm sorry to be so dogged at this, so it doesn't meet the code.
So if the proposed signage, the material, the mounting, the mounting and the square footage meet the sign code of the zoning code. The placement of the sign between above the third story, below the fourth story in that band area is not compliant with historic resource overlay standards for sign placement on a building within a historic district. So that's why it's coming before the Historic Resource Commission. It's for the placement of the signs on the building within the historic district. So because it's in that between the third and fourth story, it should be a floor lower in order to comply with the historic resource overlay section of the zoning code.
I'm sorry to do this to you, but.
Yep.
So, this is as proposed at this height. That's as proposed.
Yep.
What's permitted
It's actually one, I apologize, is one floor line. It's
here,
between the first and second floor is what's
It would be in-
permitted.
here,
Yes,
Correct,
okay.
per the HR.
So,
per the HRO.
so it's permitted here,
Mhm.
it's proposed here.
Correct.
You both, staff, think a reasonable solution, however we get there, that's kind of where I'm going, is here.
Yep.
Isn't that a variance?
It's a variance on the HRC overlay.
So it's
But
not
it's
technically
not
a
a
variance, they're
variance.
asking for a certificate of appropriateness, and
Okay.
you can, through a certificate of appropriateness, provide that relief in a way.
Relief from the, the
Because
overlay.
the sign code, the sign section of the USDO does not stipulate where the placement on the building should be within these floors. The only thing is the top, at the top of the building, that's for a building 9 or more stories. There's stipulations. They're seeking a certificate of appropriateness for what we deem to be an inappropriate alteration to the building. For the HR, we can't do it as a staff level, so it has to come to you in order to receive approval for placement between the third and fourth stories, or you have to grant approval for what staff's recommending between the second and third story. So it doesn't require a variance, it just requires the HRC's approval of the certificate of appropriateness for what they're proposing to do.
Okay, I don't understand why it doesn't require variance and a variance process that I'm more familiar with, but I trust that you've done your work and you're correct.
May I add something? One thing I have learned in the course of our tabling this matter is if this is not approved at the level of which they are, there's a good chance they will not be permitted by the landlord to use that space below, and that will not grant them to have any signage for their business.
Say
The
that
landlord is
again?
concerned, and he does have a point, that putting it over there because the design of the building gives the impression of which that building is now that, being the main entrance of that building over the archways. If that entire building was Citibank or something like that, Citibank would have a large sign over those entrance archways, and it would be the appearance that that building was Citibank building.
So they want to put the sign in that spot because their offices are directly
Then that is
on the
exactly,
fourth floor,
and that is where their office is.
directly above there.
Can we go back to the 1, 2, 3, 4?
Could I just, so the couch white, is that what that says?
Yes.
Do they have the whole rest of the building besides this spot? Because their name is on the top of the building.
I'm not sure where they're located within this building.
They have the two top floors.
Okay.
Are there other tenants on those floors?
As far as I recall, no, they have the complete two top floors.
It just seems odd to me, the idea that in a high-rise office building, you would have signs all over the building wherever that a particular business is located, because would look a little odd eventually. But I understand what you're saying.
And as Chris pointed out, with the addition of these two signs, there would be no other signage allowed on the exterior of the building unless they were to remove.
Right. I guess it's sort of the landlord's point that, oh, if the signs are where you're suggesting, then suddenly people think that it's the whole building. But Couch White is at the top of the building.
Yeah,
I would
there's other
think
signs that
they
are
would
clearly
think
visible.
that's the whole building.
More of a street level perception. Couch White wanted that sign so they could be seen from 787. That's what they were primarily looking for. I actually was the salesperson on that project, and we and all of the attorneys from that office took a class trip and walked across the bridge over to the park on the other side of the river to be sure, and we had people up on the roof holding a banner to be sure that we were able to see it from 787.
Right.
Erin, could you do some magic and put the proposed, or Chris?
Here you go.
No, I want to see it right next to the image on the left.
So you want this?
I want the image on the left next to, yeah, please. Okay, 2 and 4, the signs for 1, 2, and 4, are they directly above those?
The entrance to Albany, upstate down below that sign, and the other two signs are markers for the building.
So if you swap the markers for the building itself to the two proposed locations.
Sorry, we're having no problems.
Broadway Plaza.
That's a big ask of the landlord, and who is gonna pay the expense to remove the letters, repair the damage.
Right, but ideally that would be a
Reinstall the
good
letters.
idea.
Oh, actually, are you totally disconnected? Because I would also like to see 80 State. I'm curious.
Next to,
No, I just want to see 80 State, not moving anything around. You showed 80 State as an example of
I can pull it up.
6 signs. So while you're doing that.
There you go.
Okay, so M&T Bank is in the corner and whatever that green icon is right there. Morgan Stanley, I'm assuming their offices have a door on the storefront. And PKS is,
If I remember, they're in the upper floors.
so, I mean,
So is the green sign.
in a way I hear what your landlord's saying, but this would be a great example for them that nobody thinks that that entire building is PKS.
Please don't answer that.
So,
So staff, while she's looking at that, staff has suggested that the signage move down one level, and what you're saying is the owner doesn't want to do that.
From what I understand, is their reason, because of where they're located, and the owner was not pleased with it being anywhere other than that. And in going back and forth with project manager, they said if they have no other alternative but to move it down, they have no other alternative, and they have to go through their landlord and say, I'm not saying it's 100% done, but there's reasons that they're proposing it and asking to put it where they are. And honestly, with the Couch White where it is, the way the building is designed, I mean, if PKS did not have glass and unattachable installation methods, I'm sure they would have requested their logos to be up on the floor of which they were located. I mean, the building design sometimes limited and called for.
You just don't really see signs on upper floors of office buildings proclaiming that that floor is where that business is. Like, that's just not, I can't think of.
It's also the one on Broadway, I don't know if the address is on Broadway, but right over by the entrance to 797 by the Palace. That's another example of a building in the city that has multiple tenants and multiple signs representing.
It's not
the
within
tenant.
the historic district.
But what was done under a previous code was done under a previous code, and this is where we are now.
Yeah.
So I understand that discussion, it's kind of interesting, but it doesn't feel relevant.
I guess I'm just making the point that this seems like if the tenant's saying we have to have our sign by where our office is, that feels a little unreasonable, but
And
also
do they
it
have the
doesn't
whole
comply with
floor?
the ordinance.
Yes.
What about just
100%.
moving the signs down a little bit? How would that work? Would that look weird? Because there's a
Well-
couple other signs,
Right. Yeah.
in that location. I don't think Aaron can.
I think we're still saying that it should be not actually on the floor where the building.
Right,
where
but
they
still,
are,
so drop
they're
it.
lower.
Drop it and move it down.
Right. Or they could even just put it on the second floor for that matter. So you're saying that the tenant could potentially, the landlord could say, like the tenant could walk away.
The tenant is okay with me accepting you guys saying they can only do this if they move it down a floor. But they do risk the chance of having their landlord tell them they can't do that. And if that does happen, they don't have a sign.
And
So
the
that's,
tenant must have a sign?
That's kind of theoretical for us.
Well, I
don't
guess,
think that works.
yeah, I guess I would
Yeah.
hate to have a vacant floor of an office building because of a
Thank you, Amy.
historic
Right.
resources overlay when it's a non-contributing building in the first place.
Right, but if they dropped it down as what we want and then moved it over, moved it over to a different part of
Yeah.
that would appease the landlord. maybe,
Yeah,
Whether or not the applicant would like that.
Well, I think what we just heard is that the tenant would accept it, but doesn't know if the landlord would, but that's so theoretical to us that I don't think our action should be based on
True.
that. I think we should
Yeah.
well, I guess,
follow the recommendation. I mean, in my opinion,
Mhm.
it's an interesting discussion, but staff has spent more time at it, looking at the ordinance.
Yep.
And
yeah,
the tenant says that would be acceptable to drop it down one level. We can talk a little bit more again about the placement. It's a
Yeah.
Good point,
Yeah.
but other than that, if the landlord doesn't like it, then that's part of the presentation that would, a firm statement on that would be the presentation that should be made to us, rather than us worrying that the landlord might not like it.
Right. Right. Agreed. Yeah,
yeah.
it's true. I understand what you're thinking.
I guess
too,
I'm just
though.
like, I don't know, it just seems like, what are we trying to do?
There's lots of things to
Is our
consider.
issue that the sign's too high? Like, why are we moving it at all if we're talking about a difference of 12 feet, like, then it's just gonna be below somebody else's, this is what I'm just trying, it's just kind of truth in building, like, if you're gonna have a sign, it's on the corner, what's wrong with it there versus it's still not part of, it still doesn't comply with the overlay. We could drop it down. But that just feels weird, it just feels, and I appreciate your effort on this, but it just feels a little odd to me to over 12 feet or whatever it is,
Right.
to have it then be below a floor where that tenant isn't even located.
But we have to set a precedent
Yes.
tonight.
But
Yes.
what's the precedent we're
Because-
setting?
Well, I don't, yeah, I mean,
Like,
that's, I guess that's the
put
tricky
it
thing
as-
here, because,
Because it's still not compliant with the overlay, so it's like, if it's not, I feel like it's almost splitting hairs. And what's the real issue?
If the commission doesn't find that the placement of the sign between the third and fourth floor and non-contributing building does not have an adverse impact, then you can issue the certificate of appropriateness. If you feel that the proposed placement is, not typical of signage found throughout the district, which is what staff is basing their recommendation on, is that when we look at, 80 State Street and other placement, we have not approved signage above that second, third floor band.
80 State
so-
Street, there's a precedent set.
So, based on that is why we're making our recommendation that it be, within this band area. But again, it's up to because that's what we've been following, and the placement is outside of what we approved previously in non-contributing building, that's why we've sent it to the HRC. So it is up to you all to make a determination as to whether or not the current proposed placement has adverse impact on the historic district and surrounding historic structures. If you find that it doesn't have adverse impact, then you can, approve the certificate of appropriateness, just knowing that then would open up further requests from other sign companies for that placement
Well,
on buildings.
I hear that. I mean, we're already opening up a precedent, I guess, on 80 State Street. It's between the second and third floor, but that was a good point, that it's all glass panels above that, so it would be perhaps more challenging to put signs, like, they're two different buildings, so I don't, I guess, I don't feel that the sign as proposed has an adverse impact on any historic building. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I would say that putting it at the corner instead of floating in the middle of the wall is a big difference to me. I don't think I was here for the first proposal, but I feel like that has a difference in placement. Like,
As
it kind of-
proposed.
As proposed,
The
like, this makes
the
sense.
placement of the sign hasn't changed from the previous meeting.
Yeah, so I think that putting it at the corner, if we're talking about precedent, I would have a harder time with multiple signs just, dotting an entire elevation placed kind of randomly.
Mhm.
But at a corner, it makes sense to me. I think it's a little, I appreciate the solution for the compromise, but it does seem a little odd to put a sign for a business below a floor that business isn't on. So that's kind of a weird precedent.
Even the current proposal is below the floor that they're going to be occupying.
I thought they were gonna be on the fourth floor.
So it's here, and they're occupying this floor, so I mean.
Yeah, so, that makes sense to me, it's below the floor that if you put it the floor below, then it has no relation to where the business is. I don't know,
Erin, let me ask you a question. It's very tricky and it's kind of conceptual.
you're talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, we share it, sorry. It's very tricky, and they're non-contributing buildings, and there's precedents, and we have this unknown as to what the landlord would.
Well, yeah.
So here's my question for you, is in concept, the sign ordinance is trying to hold signage down to a more traditional elevation within the downtown district. Right, that's what the sign ordinance.
The historic resource overlay is doing that.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
okay, so our overlay is trying to hold the sign down, that's a given. And Therefore, even with these other discussions, which have certainly validity, bringing the sign down to more closely approximate the intent of the overlay seems not only appropriate, but it also seems to be closer, it seems to shrink the gap from precedence as we come back in the future to see this on another building.
But this is still not, sorry, I'm gonna stand up. This is still not a pedestrian scale sign. If you put signs up here, that's still not pedestrian scale. So, I mean, either,
I'm not disagreeing, but
That's
I'm worried
not-
about precedence and
like, I would say the precedent would be, there should be no signs above this level, and maybe just no, I mean, no signs for upper floor buildings, but this is a whole separate, I mean, that would be different, that would be a whole overlay
overlay.
rewriting.
No, we're not,
I
yeah.
mean, we're not doing that, but
Right.
I guess, so I hear what you're saying. I guess I think it's was it difference without a distinction, or whatever that phrase is, like, I don't.
I would just add for one of your other concerns you mentioned before, it looks like they are actually on the 3rd floor. So if it did move down, it would be, like right now, I think it's above where they are, and it would just be below where they
Okay.
are instead. So
That makes a difference to me, because it does feel like if we're saying we're allowing this sign, it is where they are.
Yeah, on their website, it says 540 Broadway, 3rd floor.
Okay. I don't feel like it makes a big difference. I don't feel like this versus what staff proposes makes a big difference. So
No.
I guess that's where I land. I defer to my colleagues on it, but I feel like, I don't know. Neither of it's pedestrian scale. It's a not pedestrian friendly scale building anyways. It's not very historic.
But the building is, there's kind of conceptually two different threads there. One is the building pedestrian, of a pedestrian scale, not as the historic buildings are. But in this area, the intent of the overlay is to maintain some of that character into the adjacent areas.
But then I would say,
It also recognizes the notion that you're encouraging ground floor operations, businesses that aren't necessarily, part of the office structure above, but they are, businesses that have a sidewalk entrance. And that's the reason that the overlay kind of reinforces that band for signage. Once you break out of that band and out of that sidewalk approach, then it probably should relate more to kind of the scale of the building and how the building is massed. But again, with that double story height entry in the clipped out corner, it does offer a level of confusion.
What does?
Putting the sign down at the third floor spandrel, because that's where that kind of indicates that's the address for the building. I'm kind of siding with what the owner's concern might be for the building. No one's going to be allowed to put any more signs on the building unless they peel some off after these go up, wherever they go. So I'm kind of hearing what Aaron is saying, that, the location, well, I appreciate all the research that staff has done, and I understand the precedent issues. It's a non-contributing building, in the historic district. I don't have a real big problem with having the sign at the 4th floor spandrel. But if that's not where their offices are, then that kind of works against it again. So I've managed to
I think
confuse
it's
the issue
irrelevant where their office is. It's in there somewhere.
somewhere.
Right. It may change from
Well, that's why you have office directories on the corner of the building. They don't screw around with signs all over the outside of it.
Don, what scenario would we run, we're talking about precedents for a moment. What kind of scenario might we run into where this would come back and kick us? A different set of some of the new, conditions, but.
I can't really think of any. But again, there are a lot of new buildings going up in historic districts that are a non-contributory structure that are of larger size. An example is a lot of these apartment buildings going up all over town.
So do you have a concern as to where the signage on those buildings will be?
I still like sticking with the ordinance and saying if you've got grade level businesses and you have a commercial component, which aids the sidewalk activity, then that second floor spandrel is where that's the sign panel. That's the traditional sign panel location. And that's where they should go.
Is that because the commercial activity, commercial-ish activity, is only on the first floor? If on one of the 6-story buildings we had offices on 2 floors and then the apartments above, do you think you'd have the same feeling?
I think if you've got an office building, an office business, the front door is wherever the elevator is.
Yeah,
Right.
and you
That's
have
their front door.
a directory. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
like if you go into a medical office complex,
Yeah.
there's a directory. You don't have every name
You
of
don't
every
have
doctor
everybody's
on
name under the
sign.
window where their office is.
Yeah,
Right.
which was sort of, that was the point I was trying to make is, in the future, I think it's worthy of a conversation about above, barring the ground floor signage that you're referencing for, we might want to be more specific about not allowing signs at all above, like the, whatever it is, I want to say Club Harbor, the law firm at the top.
Oh, I know, I was gonna say that too.
I know.
Sounds
But that's not what we're talking about right now. So, I don't know.
Which that too. If the concern is most about the precedent that you guys set by doing this, like the decision and like the paperwork that actually grants the certificate of appropriateness can be more like narrowly tailored and written in a way where it keeps it as much as possible to like this specific building, the reasons this building that might not apply to many others. So you could do that as well.
And so that's a good idea, but what are those? What would those be here for this project?
Just from what I've heard you guys talking about, certainly you could, mention it's not being a non-contributing structure would be a factor, I would imagine. And then if there are other specific things that you guys identify that you would want thrown in there to further differentiate it, you can certainly throw those out there.
Double
The
height
unique-
entry
The
sign.
unique massing of the building and the double-story height entry, it just gets confusing.
To have the proposed signage of one level down. That's what you're saying. The confusion is that the signage for a single tenant directly at the entry point to the building.
It's an implication that they're the
That
key
they- the
person,
entire
most
building.
important person in the building.
To I was thinking this, what you had just said, I was gonna kind of chime in and say, like, one of the things, I do all of the permitting, and I know this isn't technically a variance, but it's something similar, and one of the reasons that we're basically allowed to ask for variances is because the basic codes are relatively general and they don't always apply to every situation. You guys hear things about setbacks, a house might be sitting built as is before a setback, and if somebody wants to build a fence, there's gotta be a consideration that there's no 5-foot setback from that house to that property line, and the house can't be moved. So it gives that person, that applicant, that opportunity for that specific situation to request some relief in whatever that is. So just because this specific project on this specific architectural design building may be granted, that does not mean if I come back here on another building and say, hey, well, they got it, that doesn't mean you guys have to say, well, that's right, they got it, so they have to. There are circumstances that allow that sign to be put up where it is, and that's why they got it, and you have 5 feet to move your fence, so you don't need that release. So it's kind of, you know, you're not stuck to it. I don't know that it's really setting a precedent, but it's definitely something at some point somebody might come in and say, hey, they did it, because I know I've brought in pictures of 80 State Street and said, hey, we did it here, and the place over on Broadway, but it doesn't always work as far as, well, yes, we gotta give it to him because they had it, so.
I think this one's a toss-up for all the reasons that we've mentioned. Can we take a straw poll and understand kind of where?
I kind of like where the existing or the proposed signs are. If you were to drop them lower, it just like, they had like Jack had mentioned also, it just kind of like pulls it like they're the only business
It
here.
implies they're the most important
Okay,
thing
so
in the
that's
building.
kind of-
That's just how I feel too.
Okay. Jack, you have
I would, I would not allow any one person to be that close to that gracious, such as it is, entrance. And, you know, there's others around there, but none of them think they're going to be the building. They're just in the building. The one that goes right on top of it is going to look like they're the principal owner of the building or use of the building. It does imply a seniority and a pecking order of the people that have their signs out there.
And would the same thing be if they went down below where the other ones are? I guess that would also be the same, because it would also appear that way.
Less so.
I think I was
It's
thinking that.
it's almost a hierarchy, literally a hierarchy of being up higher than the others and being at the, you know, you don't want to create a hierarchy among tenants. And I think if you move it down over the open space, it will a hierarchy among tenants. And I think that's what the landlord is saying. It just wouldn't look right to me.
So you're
Quite
kind of
frankly, I
okay
think
with as it's proposed?
I think it's fine where it is on being up to 4. I don't think it's necessary. The building is very non-contributory. And as long as it's not too big a sign, it doesn't bother me in the least. I remember this fight with Keyback back in the 80s with Tom Whalen and another person with a strong personality. And they were Riley, Victor Riley, they were at odds over the whole thing and didn't bother me. It kind of made it interesting when it was lit up at night. That was about the very top. I still remember the Mobile Oil, the flying Pegasus. I loved it. I remember being a little kid and you'd come over from East Greenbush and you'd come in and wow, there's Pegasus. I don't think it destroyed anything. I don't think there's any real damage with what's shown on the right there. But I can see where if it dropped directly down, it was over the open space, it would create a hierarchy and an implication that may not even, might be very misleading.
What do you think?
I think that makes sense. I mean, I thought what the staff proposed made sense because I was concerned that we might have a lot of people coming that want to have their signs higher than what the code says. But I suppose if there's some kind of, wording about non-contributing building and, I mean, I would be fine with it the way it is. I guess I was just hesitant in the beginning about the future. No, you and Jack pretty much were saying the same thing.
Yeah.
No, I think where they've got it, it actually, in my mind, it less clutters the building. There's less street clutter because it's so removed from it that it's not down there, calling for your attention. And clearly with it over that double story height grand space, it implies that is, I mean, you go through that portal for that business. And that's what it implies, just like all the little, the sign over the dentist's office. You go through that portal, you're in the dentist's office. So we've come around the
I think
horn
we beat it.
on this thing, beat it to death.
It's our job.
And if you promise not to come back and use this as a precedent,
I remember nothing.
So we asked for individual variance.
So could I make are we ready for a motion?
Yep, but you got your condition, or
I-
you got that stuff worked out in your
I'm
head?
thinking about
Okay.
it, although, fill in if I get it. So I move that we approve the sign as proposed by the applicant above the third story in the corner. And noting this approval in spite of the ordinance, in part because this is a non-contributing building within the historic district. Also in deference or in recognition of this building's design with a double-story cutout arcade, how would you frame, with a double-story
You got a
cutout
monumental,
entry?
you got a monumental. entry.
Monumental entry, monumental double-story entry. Did you get that? So due to the non-contributing building and its monumental double height entry. Are you writing this down, Chris?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can tell who was writing it
He works fast.
down. I lost the motion. That we move to approve because of those circumstances,
Second.
this. Thank you.
What she said.
That was good.
All right.
Oh, so that he doesn't come back on this.
Yeah. And
Can we add to that, because something about the confusion that if it was at a lower location, it would be, as you spoke to, Jack, at a lower location, it would be confusing at the point of that monumental entry.
That's
all right.
exactly what she said. I
She
seconded
didn't
it.
speak to the confusion of it.
Well, I
Otherwise,
said
she just
due
said.
to the second, so how about due to, and to eliminate any confusion
Nice.
about the occupants of the, I don't know, to eliminate any confusion about tenants and occupants of the building.
Second.
Did that all make sense from a legal standpoint?
Incredibly.
Okay. Just wanted to touch that base
Didn't
first.
include the legal doubles.
We have a
Translated
motion.
into legalese.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is carried.
The dissent is to, in recognition of the thorough discussion.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Proposal.
we certainly appreciate the efforts of staff.
Oh,
Oh.
hi.
I will, I'm gonna tell them maybe later.
Oh. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, guys. We're all
Thank
set,
you.
right?
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Not a problem. Been here before. And I know I'll be here again, and now I have no kidding.
It was less than an hour.
That wasn't that bad. We had nothing in front of us. That was making sense.
That helped.
Have a good holiday. I will
Thank you.
see
You
guys.
too. You
Thank you.
too. Thank you.
Are we adjourned or still?
We lost
Yeah.
Jack
We are
before
still-
adjournment, I think.
Yeah, we're
Still
still.
in session, not adjourned yet.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Is there anything else to come before the commission this evening?
The only thing, that we had, we circulated Chris circulated in the email was the 2026 meeting date. So if everybody could just make note of them. If you already know that there's dates that you won't be available to attend, please let us know as soon as possible. But other than that,
Oh, and I saw something about signing up to get the packet. Is it a different procedure?
oh, so, we are going to be doing away with the listserv, where the emails come out from the dpd@albany email address. You all will still be getting agendas from us.
Oh, okay, so
But
we don't need to fill that thing
if
out.
you wanted to sign up through the agenda center on the city website, you can go in and, select that you would like to receive agendas and notifications about
Oh.
these boards, and that's how we're now going to be distributing our emails, our agenda notices to the public.
Oh, like if I wanted to get an agenda for a different
For a
board.
different board, you
Oh,
can sign up for there, so
Okay,
we will still be making sure that all, board members receive the agendas.
oh, good, okay, all right.
Any change or anything on the tutors?
As of right now, that they will be on the Land Use and Economic Development Subcommittee on Monday for a third discussion. But no real update to the discussion or kind of where it seems to be going.
I saw on Kathy Fahey's Facebook page, which I'm pretty sure is public, so, there was and I was part of the conversation about this committee meeting and, in querying, kind of out of surprise that this committee will be meeting for a third time to talk about this issue. It sounded like, and I don't know if you guys went to the meetings and have difference of opinion, but what I heard what I read was that there are committee members who are, might get this wrong, worried about the legality of designating the tutors because then the owners can't do what they want with them.
So I guess what came up at the last meeting, it came up briefly during the first meeting as well, is that, does designating these properties force the property owner to have to do anything really with the buildings? First, not designating them, and then reality is we can designate them, but that does not then require that they have to rehabilitate or forces them to, have to address things. What would really require someone to do something with the buildings is that they receive violation notices from, the building department in order that need to be addressed, making sure that the buildings are weather tight, board ups and, weatherization, or, if they were occupied, to make sure that they were habitable, safe structures, things like that. But it, and I had brought up at the first meeting that whether these properties are within a local historic district or not, they would have to go before either the Historic Resources Commission or the Planning Board in order to receive a demolition review. That there's requirements either way through the zoning code that require review for demolitions. And that depending on what they were doing, there may be requirements that they go to the Planning Board for conditional use permit or development plan review for any future development at that site, whereas they would just need to receive a certificate of appropriateness to any exterior changes to the building in historic district. So it doesn't legally force, just because it's designated doesn't legally force them to have to do something with the structure. And either way, they would need to go before some sort of land use, or through some sort of probably land use review in order to proceed with some sort of development at property.
Have you heard anything from buildings relative to, and it would seem to me that irregardless of any status, designation status, there still are requirements in the property maintenance code and in the fire code, which doesn't matter if you're designated or not, in terms of basic maintenance of those structures.
We have not heard anything from the building department in terms of this current process of designating the properties as a local historic district. And I think in some ways, the discussion of the proper, the designation has kind of veered, and it's kind of moved away from whether or not these properties hold significance in the history and the development of the city of Albany, and it's very focused on what are the plans for reuse of the structures, and is it viable to reuse the structures, and more, it's kind of weird, and I think the discussion needs to be brought back to what's in front of the Common Council is the process of designating these and whether or not they're significant.
Based on their significance.
To what the criteria of designating a property is how it's laid out within the zoning code. And that process.
As an elected body, are they allowed legally to be so subjective as to make a determination based on their own opinions of whether something's viable without following the historic resources ordinance that they passed in terms of the criteria for designation?
Well, so the designation is it is under the HRO in some way, but it is like a specific process. And really what is laid out in the USCO is like how the HRC reviews it and then the recommendation process, and then it pushes it to the Common Council that the Common Council must take action.
Since they're all elected too,
They kind of do what they want.
within reason, like that reason spans a wide breadth. Like they can go against it if they want to. They don't necessarily have to go with any particular philosophy.
Which is the challenge always with we're a certified local government, so you can't have owner approval designation be contingent on owner approval, but when it goes to the elected body,
And
they can do what they want.
you might have one member that interprets the reading of the code one way versus another member who may look at it completely different. So and any, happens in any political situation with local elected officials where we see that happen.
Different interpretations.
Have we
done anything?
Well, I have not submitted anything formally because I'm a commission member and we're having this conversation and are on the record.
The commission's role has been completed. You reviewed the report against the criteria for designation and have made a recommendation to the Common Council, which is HRC's role in the process. I think we've talked about this before, it would not be in our best interest or your best interest to kind of show up as a representation of members of the HRC, but I think, Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong, as individuals, as city residents, you could submit, correct?
That'd be the most appropriate. You don't want to speak for the board.
No, I was keeping a line even personally because even though I could come in and say I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a commission member,
At this point,
it seems like that could be.
I think it's just like a political thing more than anything else. I don't know that there's much that you guys could realistically say change hearts and minds over it, but It looks like it's probably on track at this point, just purely based on the calendar, to maybe need another vote from you guys next year anyway, with the new council. So that's probably what to look towards anyway at the moment, unfortunately.
Is it automatically go to the next council?
Not really. So usually, like currently pending, like bills, resolutions, what have you, will be like discharged, which is why they kind of have a rush at the end of the year to get everything approved. And some stuff will go forwards. I don't know if that's because they reintroduce it though or what. But as for whether or not you guys would have to give another recommendation, not 100% sure, but I would think it would help at least if no one reintroduces it. At least that way you can get it back.
So within the process, can a denial of the status occur between now and the new council?
Yes, because there's December 15th is the next full council meeting.
That's what I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
There's at least one more.
Okay, and they could act on it then?
So
Yeah, so if it
if
gets discharged on Monday, it could be heard at the next full meeting.
the committee would need to vote it out with a positive recommendation for it to then go to the.
In theory, the full council could discharge it from the commission if they wanted, but that's procedural. That's not gonna happen. They need a lot of votes to do that, yeah.
Okay, so we may see this again in January in a changed environment,
Yeah,
possibly.
Unless, I think, it wouldn't have to come back to us if Sergio just were to reintroduce it, correct?
yeah, exactly, yeah. So I think if there's someone with the will to do it, I don't know that you guys would have to be concerned with having another meeting here about it.
Is it January 8th? Meet the next meeting?
It's our next meeting, correct?
I think there was a seconded motion to adjourn.
Who motioned to
Did Jack make the motion to adjourn?
I got
You
Mary
adjourned
motioning to
yourself.
adjourn, and then Aaron seconded.
All right.
I got it.
That sounds
Oh.
great.
And we voted?
We did
All
not.
those
did
in
not
favor, say,
Aye.
I
all right.
I appreciated this discussion.